10 mechanics, 12 hours. 1990 Kenworth W900 with 800,000 miles, completely silent. The garage thick with tension and defeat. Veteran diesel specialists stepped back, tools in hand, shaking their heads. The farmer, a man whose livelihood hung by a thread, stared at the truck one last time, his harvest rotting in the fields. That's when she appeared. A waitress in worn work boots, grease-stained jeans, barely 24, carrying lunch orders from the diner. "I can fix it," she said quietly. The room fell silent, then laughter, pity mixed with disbelief. But when she opened that engine bay and pointed to a component every single one of them had checked and approved, everything changed. What she found wasn't just mechanical failure, it was deliberate sabotage. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel and let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Enjoy the story. The Kenworth wasn't just old, it was sacred. Born in 1990 when Robert Martinez's father drove it off the dealer lot, this machine had become the backbone of a 300-acre family farm. 34 years of faithful service. Over 800,000 miles hauling wheat, corn, and soybeans from field to market. Every component had been maintained with obsessive care, every oil change documented, every repair done right. The truck didn't just transport crops, it transported 3 generations of survival. Its owner was Robert Martinez, a third-generation wheat farmer, who had spent his entire life working land that his grandfather cleared with his bare hands. Robert wasn't sentimental, didn't waste words, and didn't believe in shortcuts. This Kenworth was his lifeline. It had carried his father's final harvest before the cancer took him. It had hauled Robert's first crop as the new owner. It had rumbled down country roads at dawn through drought years and flood years, through market crashes and miraculous recoveries. When people talked about the Martinez farm, they talked about the Kenworth in the same breath. The two had aged together, depended on each other, survived together. That's why what happened next didn't make sense. There was no sputter, no warning knock, no gradual decline. One moment the engine was alive, that deep, unmistakable diesel rumble that signaled another successful run to the grain elevator. The next moment, silence. Total, absolute, devastating silence. The engine locked mid-route, forcing Robert to coast onto the shoulder, dust rising around the cab. When he turned the key again, nothing answered. No crank, no fire, no breath. Just a dead machine that, by every law of mechanics and history, should have been running. The Kenworth was trailered to Martinez Equipment Repair, the small family garage that had kept it alive for 3 decades. If anyone could resurrect it, it was them. Carlos Ruiz, the lead mechanic with 25 years under his belt, had rebuilt engines that other shops had given up on. He'd diagnosed impossible failures, solved problems that defied logic, and brought countless machines back from mechanical death. When the Kenworth rolled into the bay, he went straight to work with the confidence of a man who had seen it all. The first tests were routine. Compression was solid across all cylinders. Fuel delivery was clean and steady. Electrical systems showed perfect continuity. Timing alignment was textbook. The diagnostics came back flawless, too flawless. On paper, every system that should make a diesel engine run was functioning exactly as designed. Yet the truck wouldn't even turn over. So Carlos called for backup. Diesel specialists arrived from neighboring towns, experts who had spent decades working on heavy equipment. One by one, they gathered around the Kenworth, running tests, pulling sensors, checking systems. 10 mechanics over 12 hours. Each one brought a different specialty: fuel systems, electrical diagnostics, mechanical timing, hydraulic pressure. They tore into that engine with the systematic precision of surgeons searching for disease. And they found nothing wrong. Everything passed inspection. Fuel injectors were firing correctly. The starter motor had perfect voltage. Air intake was unobstructed. Coolant was flowing. By every measurable standard, the Kenworth was a healthy machine. And yet it sat there, silent and immovable, as if something invisible was holding it hostage. Hours crawled by. By the second hour, curiosity had shifted to frustration. By the 5th, frustration had hardened into confusion. By the 10th, experienced mechanics were questioning their own expertise. The Kenworth sat in the center of the garage, partially disassembled now, its mechanical guts exposed like an autopsy that refused to reveal a cause of death. Tools changed hands. Parts were removed, measured, and reinstalled because they showed no defects. Theories were proposed and dismantled under scrutiny. By hour 12, there were 10 defeated mechanics standing in that garage. Men who had fixed the unfixable for a living. Men who had crawled under tractors in freezing rain, diagnosed combine failures in 100-degree heat, and brought dead engines back to roaring life through sheer knowledge and stubborn will. No one spoke much anymore. The truck sat there, silent, unmoved by decades of collective experience. Carlos stood back, wiping his hands on a rag already black with oil. He had rebuilt this exact engine 7 years ago. He knew every bolt, every gasket, every tolerance, but he had never seen anything like this. A machine with no reason to be dead. Every diagnostic said it should run. Every test confirmed it could run. And yet it refused. It was as if the Kenworth was keeping a secret, hiding a truth buried so deep that none of them knew where to look. Across the garage, Robert Martinez watched in silence. He hadn't moved from his spot on the workbench in hours. His face was weathered from a lifetime under the Kansas sun, but today it looked older, tired. His jaw was tight, eyes fixed on the truck that had carried his family's survival for 34 years. This wasn't just a mechanical failure. This was personal. The harvest was sitting in his fields. $200,000 worth of wheat that needed to reach the grain elevators before booking slots closed. Without the truck, he couldn't deliver. Without delivery, he couldn't make his loan payment. And Hutchins Agricultural Finance, the company that held his $380,000 note, didn't care about broken trucks or bad luck. They cared about payments. In 30 days, if Robert defaulted, they would take everything. The mechanics began packing up their tools with the quiet resignation of professionals admitting defeat. They offered Robert sympathetic words that meant nothing in the face of financial ruin. One by one, they left. Until only Carlos remained, standing beside his boss, both of them staring at the Kenworth that had finally, impossibly, failed them. If you've ever been told something's impossible, this is where you need to pay attention. Because what happened next would prove that expertise doesn't guarantee answers. That sometimes the most important solutions come from the most unexpected places. And that the person everyone overlooks might be the only one who can see the truth. Only Carlos remained, standing silent beside his boss, both men staring at the Kenworth that had finally, impossibly, failed them. Helen Louise was invisible by design. At 24, she'd perfected the art of taking up no space, making no noise, leaving no impression. She waited tables at Rosie's Diner in rural Kansas, delivered catered lunches for an extra $40 a day, and slept in her 2003 Honda Civic parked behind the truck stop where she showered for $5. Her checking account held $847. Her student loan balance sat at $73,000. The math never added up, so she'd stopped doing it. 3 years ago, she'd been someone else entirely. A Kansas State student studying agricultural engineering. Her father's dream for her. Thomas Louise had been a small wheat farmer drowning in debt, and he'd believed his daughter could save what he was losing. But Helen had switched to computer engineering halfway through. Better salary prospects, more practical. A decision that made sense on paper. Then her father's farm was foreclosed. Helen left school to help, but there was nothing to help with anymore. 6 months later, Thomas Louise walked into his empty barn and didn't walk out. Helen still carried his suicide note in her wallet, the paper worn thin from being unfolded too many times. I couldn't save the farm. I failed you all. She blamed herself for all of it. If she'd stayed in agricultural engineering, if she'd been there, if she'd been better. So she drifted, dropped out completely. Worked survival jobs where no one asked questions and she didn't have to explain what she'd lost. She was delivering lunch to Martinez Equipment Repair when she saw the Kenworth. Set the catering bags on the break room table, turned to leave, then froze. Through the garage door, she could see the truck surrounded by defeated mechanics. Her father had driven the same model, same year. She knew that silhouette like a childhood memory. Helen stood in the doorway, watching mechanics argue and pack up, watching Robert Martinez sit with his head in his hands. And something surfaced from the wreckage of her abandoned education, Professor Chen's lecture on equipment failure analysis. Sabotage patterns, look for what's correct but wrong, the hidden inconsistency. The mechanics left, Only Carlos and Robert remained. Helen's hands shook as she walked into the garage bay. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "I think I know what's wrong." Carlos turned, exhausted. "Sweetheart, we've been doing this for 30 years. But Robert looked up and saw something in her face. Desperation, maybe, or recognition. "Let her try," he said quietly. "What have we got to lose?" Helen moved to the engine, pointed to the fuel injector pump timing gear. "This locking pin, it's torqued perfectly, exactly 42 foot-pounds." Carlos shrugged. "That's correct factory spec. For a 1993 W900, Helen said. "This is a 1990. The spec is 38 foot-pounds. Someone replaced this recently and over-torqued it. The gear teeth are stress-fractured. It locked your timing sequence. The engine can't rotate." Silence filled the garage. Helen removed the pin with steady hands. Under magnification, the gear teeth showed microscopic fractures exactly where she said they'd be. She replaced it with a correct torque pin from the parts bin. "Try it now." Robert turned the key. The Kenworth roared to life, that deep, unmistakable diesel rumble that meant survival. Carlos stared at her. "How did we miss that?" Helen's face was troubled as the engine thundered around them. "You weren't supposed to see it," she said. "Someone did this deliberately." Robert's voice cut through the diesel rumble. "Where'd you learn that?" Helen wiped her hands on her jeans, not meeting his eyes. 2 years at Kansas State. Agricultural engineering. I dropped out. Been working odd jobs since." Robert's expression shifted. Something clicked behind his eyes. "Louise," he said slowly. "Helen Louise. Your father was Thomas Louise." Shame flooded through her so fast it felt physical. "Yes. I knew your dad." Robert's voice softened. "Good man, lost his farm to Hutchins Finance 3 years ago." He paused, studying her face. "This wasn't your fault, Helen. Your father wouldn't want you carrying this." The words cracked something in her chest she'd kept sealed shut. She looked away before the tears could come. Robert didn't give her time to retreat. "I need someone with your mind. Apprentice diesel mechanic, $18 an hour, room above the garage." Helen's head snapped up. "I'm not certified. I haven't worked on trucks in 3 years. I don't." "You saw what 10 certified mechanics missed," Robert interrupted. "You're hired." Carlos stepped forward, his protest weak but automatic. "Boss, she saved my farm, Carlos." Robert's tone left no room for argument. "That's all the certification I need." The other mechanics filtered back in over the next hour, drawn by the sound of the running Kenworth. Their skepticism was immediate and barely concealed. A woman. Young, not certified. Book learning wasn't real experience. They said it without saying it, in the glances they exchanged and the questions they didn't ask her directly. Maria Martinez appeared in the garage doorway, Robert's 16-year-old daughter, curious and sharp-eyed. "Dad never hires women," she said to Helen, not unkindly, just stating fact. Helen accepted the offer because she was terrified and desperate, and because for the first time in 3 years, someone had looked at her and seen something other than a waitress who'd failed at everything that mattered. She moved into the small room above the garage that same evening. 4 walls, a bed, a window that looked out over fields that stretched to the horizon. First real housing in 8 months. The relief was so overwhelming, she had to sit on the floor for a while, just to breathe. Her first paycheck in 3 years that didn't come from tips. That night, while the garage was quiet and empty, Helen went back downstairs. She couldn't let go of what she'd found. A locking pin torqued for the wrong year, installed during routine maintenance. It wasn't an accident. It was too precise to be an accident. She pulled the Kenworth's maintenance records from the filing cabinet. Last service, 6 weeks ago, at Hutchins Agricultural Equipment. Routine inspection and timing system maintenance. The technician's signature was illegible, but the work order was clear. Helen cross-referenced the parts database on the garage computer, tracing the locking pin specifications. The wrong pin had been installed during that service, deliberately. The timing was calculated. 6 weeks was long enough for the overtorque stress to fracture the gear teeth. Long enough to fail during harvest season when Robert needed the truck most. She sat back in the desk chair, the glow of the computer screen reflecting off her face in the dark garage. Someone had sabotaged Robert Martinez's truck. And they'd done it at Hutchins Agricultural Equipment, the same company that held his loan, the same company that had foreclosed on her father's farm. Helen's hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady as she printed the maintenance records and part specifications. Because this wasn't random mechanical failure. This was deliberate. This was a pattern. And if it happened to Robert, it could be happening to others. Helen worked like someone afraid the opportunity would evaporate if she blinked. 60-hour weeks. Hands black with grease, back aching, mind sharp. At night, she studied for ASE certification, memorizing torque specs and diagnostic protocols until the words blurred. She was careful, methodical, asked smart questions, and listened harder than she spoke. Carlos tested her constantly. Diagnose this fuel contamination. Helen checked the sample, ran tests, traced the symptoms. Biodiesel blended wrong, phase separation, water in the tank. Carlos studied her for a long moment, then nodded, grudging. You're better than half my certified guys. It wasn't friendship yet, but it was respect. And that was more than she'd had in 3 years. Maria befriended her without hesitation, showing up after school to sit on the workbench and talk while Helen worked. You're like the sister I never had, she said one afternoon, swinging her legs. Helen didn't know how to respond to that kind of easy affection, so she just smiled and kept her hands busy. Robert checked on her the way a father would, made sure she was eating, asked if she needed anything. The first time he did it, Helen almost broke down. She felt something dangerous stirring in her chest. Hope. For the first time in 3 years, she could imagine a future that wasn't just survival. 50 miles away, Dale Hutchins sat in his office at Hutchins Agricultural Equipment and Finance, staring at a report. Martinez's Kenworth running again. Harvest completed, loan payment made on time. He was furious. The sabotage was supposed to force foreclosure. The timing had been perfect, 6 weeks for the stress fractures to develop. Failure during critical harvest season, Martinez unable to deliver crops, default inevitable. Dale had already planned the land resale to developers. Big money. Easy money, he made a call. Who fixed Martinez's truck? The answer came back within an hour. Helen Louise, 24, former agricultural engineering student, working as apprentice mechanic. Dale leaned back, memory surfacing. Louise, Thomas Louise's daughter. He remembered Thomas, weak man, couldn't handle the pressure of losing his farm. The daughter ran away to computers, Dale murmured. Now she's playing mechanic. He smiled coldly. Let's see if she's as weak as her father. Helen drove to Hutchins Agricultural Equipment on her day off. Reconnaissance, she told herself. Just checking. The facility was larger than Martinez's garage, cleaner, more corporate. She walked in asking about parts availability, watching everything. Dale Hutchins appeared within minutes. Mid-50s, smooth, too friendly. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I remember your father, he said. Tragic what happened. You working at Martinez's place now? Cold dread washed through her. Just learning the trade. Good for you. Robert's lucky to have someone with your education. Barry Kowalski, the head mechanic, watched from the service bay. Hostile, territorial. His eyes followed her until she left. Helen drove back to Martinez's garage with her hands tight on the wheel and a sick feeling in her stomach. They knew who she was. They knew where she worked. They're targeting Robert, she whispered to herself. I can feel it. Frank Morrison called on a Tuesday afternoon, his voice tight with urgency. Emergency. My John Deere combine's making a weird noise. Harvest starts tomorrow. Can you look at it? Robert sent Helen and Carlos together. Morrison's farm was 20 miles out, his combine sitting in the equipment barn looking pristine except for the problem. Helen ran diagnostics while Carlos watched, still testing her, still measuring. She found it quickly. Fuel contamination. Water in the diesel, filters clogged with sediment. Phase separation, she told Morrison. Water's gotten into your fuel system. We need to drain the tank, replace filters, flush the lines. They worked methodically. Helen documented everything. Photographs of the contaminated fuel, measurements of water content, detailed notes on every component they touched. She replaced the filters, drained the tank, cleaned the fuel system, tested it twice. Carlos double-checked her work and found nothing wrong. Morrison paid, relieved and grateful. You folks saved me. I'd have been dead in the water tomorrow. Helen drove back feeling competent. Useful. Like maybe she belonged. 48 hours later, Morrison's combine caught fire. Mid-harvest, cutting through wheat, the engine compartment suddenly erupted in flames. fuel line rupture. Fire spread fast, diesel burning hot and black. Frank Morrison jumped from the cab, stumbled backward, his arms burned. 40 acres of wheat gone. The combine, a $450,000 machine, destroyed. Melted metal and ash by the time the volunteer fire department arrived. The fire marshal's preliminary finding was immediate and damning. Fuel system failure following recent service work. Word spread through the farming community the way wildfire spreads through dry wheat. Everyone knew everyone. Phones rang. Coffee shop conversations turned grim. The whispers started first, then hardened into accusations. Martinez's garage did faulty work. That new girl mechanic didn't know what she was doing. Robert hired someone not certified. This is what happens. The insurance investigator arrived at Martinez Equipment Repair 2 days later, official and cold. He impounded what remained of the combine, had it trailered to a forensic facility. His preliminary report came fast. Inadequate fuel system repair led to catastrophic failure. The phone stopped ringing after that. Farmers who'd scheduled appointments called to cancel. Polite, apologetic, terrified. Can't risk it, Robert. You understand. Got my whole operation to think about. Carlos found Helen in the garage bay, staring at her hands. Walk me through exactly what you did on Morrison's combine. She showed him her documentation, photographs, measurements, step-by-step notes. I was thorough. I double-checked everything. I tested the system twice before we left. Carlos studied the documentation in silence, then looked at her. He didn't say she'd done anything wrong, but he didn't say she hadn't either. The doubt crept in like water through a cracked seal. Helen lay awake that night, replaying every moment at Morrison's farm. Every filter she'd replaced, every connection she'd tightened. Had she missed something? Some critical detail her incomplete education hadn't prepared her for? What if she wasn't good enough? What if 3 years away from engineering had eroded something essential? What if she'd destroyed the one good thing she'd built since her father died? Maria found her the next morning, the 16-year-old's eyes red from crying. Dad could lose everything because of this, she said. Not accusatory, just terrified. The insurance company's threatening to drop us. Other farmers won't come. If we can't work? She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Helen had saved Robert's farm once. Now she might be the reason it died. Dale Hutchins arrived at Martinez Equipment Repair 3 days after the fire, wearing false sympathy like an expensive suit. Robert, terrible situation, he said, shaking his head with practiced concern. If you need financing help during this rough patch, we can work something out. The predator offering rope to the drowning man. His eyes found Helen across the garage. Mistakes happen, he said, voice smooth. Sometimes people get in over their heads. The smile never reached his eyes. After he left, Robert turned to Helen. I still believe in you. But she saw the worry behind his words. Liability lawsuit looming. Reputation damaged. Business dying. Robert believed in her, but belief didn't pay legal fees or bring back customers. That night, Helen packed her bag in the small room above the garage. Her hands moved mechanically, folding the few clothes she owned. I destroy everything I touch, she whispered, just like my father. She pulled his suicide note from her wallet, the paper worn thin. I couldn't save the farm. I failed you all. The pattern was repeating. Failure, shame, escape. She'd run from school when things got hard. Run from her father's crisis when she should have stayed. Now she was about to run again because it was the only thing she knew how to do. The knock on her door was soft. Maria's voice cracked when she spoke. Please don't leave. You didn't do this. I know you didn't. How do you know? Helen's voice was hollow. Because you care too much. You check everything 3 times. You document everything. You're not capable of being sloppy. Something shifted in Helen. Maria believed in her more than she believed in herself. The 16-year-old saw something Helen had forgotten existed. She unpacked her bag. At midnight, Helen drove to the impound yard with $100 cash, half of everything she had. The security guard looked the other way for 20 minutes. She examined Morrison's combine remains by flashlight, photographing everything, taking measurements of the charred wreckage. And she found it. The fuel line coupling had been replaced. Wrong specification. Deliberate mismatch. The same pattern as the Kenworth sabotage, correct torque, wrong part. Designed to pass inspection but fail catastrophically under pressure. Helen pulled Morrison's service records the next morning. Last maintenance, 2 weeks before she touched it. At Hutchins Agricultural Equipment. Fuel system service. They'd replace the coupling with the wrong spec, knowing it would fail. But fail later, after someone else worked on it. The perfect frame. Blame falls on the last person to touch the equipment. She brought the evidence to Robert and Carlos, spread the photographs and measurements across the workbench. They saw it immediately. Morrison was set up, Helen was set up, all to destroy Martinez's garage. Hutchins has foreclosed on 14 farms in 8 years, Robert said quietly. Every single one had unexpected equipment failures right before default. Carlos's face went pale. My cousin lost his farm that way. Combine died during harvest. We thought it was just bad luck. They needed proof of systematic sabotage, proof that would hold up in court. Helen's voice was steady when she spoke. I'll get hired at Hutchins. I'll document everything. Too dangerous, Robert said immediately. If he finds out. My father lost everything to men like this. Helen met his eyes. I won't run anymore. Helen dyed her hair darker brown in a truck stop bathroom. Changed her clothes, more conservative, less herself. Practiced a different name in the mirror until it felt natural. Sarah Mitchell, diesel mechanic with 3 years at a Peterbilt dealer in Dodge City. No local connections, no history. She applied at Hutchins Agricultural Equipment on a Thursday. Barry Kowalski interviewed her, suspicious and desperate in equal measure. 2 mechanics had quit the week before. He studied her resume, studied her face. Helen played it perfectly, competent but not threatening, eager to please, willing to work overtime. A body to fill the gap. Barry brought the resume to Dale's office. She's qualified, we need bodies. Dale reviewed it, his expression flat. No local connections? That's good. He didn't recognize her. He'd only seen her briefly at Martinez's garage, and the hair was different now. Hire her. Helen started Monday. Day 1, she kept her head down, spoke little, observed everything. Barry treated customers differently. She noticed it immediately. Some got priority maintenance, personal attention, careful work. Others got standard maintenance, rushed and perfunctory. 2 different parts storage areas, the official one up front and another in the back, unmarked. Day 2, the pattern emerged. Helen watched Barry pull parts from the back storage, bin B, for specific customers. She cross-referenced customer names against parts used during her lunch break. Every farmer with Hutchins financing who was behind on payments got bin B parts. Counterfeit components. Wrong specifications, designed to pass inspection but fail catastrophically. She photographed everything on her phone, hands steady, heart racing. Day 3, Helen found the document. Barry's office door was unlocked during lunch. He was outside smoking. She slipped in, pulse hammering. Found it in the second drawer. Maintenance schedule priority tier 2. 8 names. Farmers with Hutchins loans, equipment sabotage timing coordinated with payment due dates. Robert Martinez, Kenworth timing gear completed. Frank Morrison combine fuel coupling completed. 6 others pending. Dates, specific failure points, financial projections for land resales. Helen photographed every page, hands shaking now, sweat cold on her back. This wasn't just sabotage, this was systematic land theft. 14 farms already taken, 8 more targeted. She heard footsteps in the hallway. Barry's voice, coming closer. Helen pocketed her phone and slipped out the back door of the office 30 seconds before Barry returned. Day 4, Helen returned at midnight. Barry's smoker habit left the back window cracked. She'd watched him prop it open 3 nights running. She slipped into Dale's office, wearing gloves, using her phone's flashlight. The hidden files were in a locked cabinet. She picked it with a screwdriver in 90 seconds. Technique learned from a YouTube video the night before. Inside, detailed sabotage protocols. Each targeted farmer's equipment, specific failure points. Timing schedules coordinated with loan payment dates. Financial projections for land resales after foreclosure. 14 farms already taken. 8 more targeted, including Roberts. Legal contracts structured to shield liability, bearing culpability in maintenance agreement fine print. Helen photographed everything. Over 200 images. Her hands didn't shake anymore. Day 5, Barry cornered her near the parts counter. You look familiar. Where are you from? Dodge City, Helen said calmly. Peterbilt dealer, like my resume says. I swear I've seen you somewhere. Barry's eyes narrowed. Dale appeared. Problem, Barry? The moment stretched. Dale studied Helen's face, recognition flickering. Then his phone rang, distraction, and they both turned away. Helen texted Robert immediately. Compromised. Extraction tonight. Everything. She clocked out at 5, walked to her car in the parking lot. Barry followed, realization dawning on his face. I remember now. You fixed Martinez's Kenworth. Helen ran. Barry grabbed her car door. Give me your phone. She kicked him back hard, jumped in, drove off. In her rearview mirror, Barry was already calling Dale. It's Thomas Louise's daughter. She's been spying. Dale's voice came through cold and clear. Follow her. Get that phone. Whatever it takes. Helen drove straight to Martinez Equipment Repair, Barry's truck close behind. Robert and Carlos were waiting. She'd texted ahead with instructions. Barry pulled up, jumped out, demanded the phone. Robert stepped forward. You're trespassing. You've got 3 seconds to leave. Barry made a critical error. He pulled a knife. Carlos moved faster than a man his age should move. Disarmed Barry, pinned him face down on the concrete. Barry struggled, cursing, threatening. Sheriff Tomlin's patrol car rolled up 30 seconds later. Robert had called ahead. Helen handed her phone to the sheriff, her voice steady. Everything you need is here. 200 photos, sabotage protocols, targeted farmer lists, financial fraud, 14 farms stolen, 8 more targeted. Sheriff Tomlin scrolled through the images, his expression hardening with every swipe. Get Dale Hutchins on the phone, he said to his deputy. We're bringing him in tonight. Sheriff Tomlin was skeptical at first. Dale Hutchins is a respected businessman. These are serious accusations. Helen walked him through it methodically. Photos of both parts bins, legitimate OEM components versus counterfeit failures. Sabotage schedules coordinated with loan payment dates. Financial projections for land resales. The targeted farmer list with Robert Martinez and Frank Morrison marked completed. 14 farms already foreclosed. 8 more pending. Barry cracked under interrogation within 2 hours. Dale ordered everything. I just did what he said. He told me which parts to use, which customers to target, when to time the failures. I kept records because I knew someday it might come back on me. The warrant for Dale Hutchins was issued before midnight. The raid came at dawn. Multi-agency operation, federal investigators, state police, county sheriff. They hit Hutchins' agricultural equipment with overwhelming force. Found both parts bins exactly where Helen said they'd be. Falsified maintenance records, targeted customer files. Financial documents showing 14 farm foreclosures and subsequent land resales to developers at massive markups. Dale Hutchins was arrested in his office, wearing a suit, drinking coffee, acting like any other Wednesday morning. 47 counts: fraud, conspiracy, sabotage, racketeering, theft by deception. Barry turned state's evidence immediately, detailing every sabotage job over 8 years. The other mechanics at Hutchins hadn't known. Dale had compartmentalized the operation, keeping the criminal activity between himself and Barry. The targeted farms entered legal proceedings to reverse fraudulent seizures. The 8 farms still pending were warned, their equipment inspected, sabotage components replaced. Dale Hutchins faced 25 to 30 years in federal prison. His agricultural empire was dismantled, assets seized, sold at auction to cover restitution. The insurance investigator cleared Helen of the Morrison combined fire within a week. Frank Morrison showed up at Martinez Equipment Repair, his arms still bandaged from burns, and apologized publicly. You saved my farm by exposing this. I'm sorry I doubted you. Business flooded back to Martinez garage, more than before. Helen's story spread through local news, agricultural journals, farming advocacy groups. The rookie mechanic who took down the land thief. People drove from 3 counties to have their equipment serviced by the girl who'd seen what 10 experts missed. 6 months later, Helen's life looked nothing like the one she'd been living in her Honda Civic. She was a certified ASE master diesel technician, passed all 8 tests on the first attempt. Robert made her a 25% partner in Martinez Equipment Repair, over her protests, saying she'd earned it twice over. She enrolled part-time at Kansas State, finishing her agricultural engineering degree. Honor student. She lived in the renovated foreman's cottage on Robert's property, a small house with windows that looked out over fields that stretched to the horizon. And she drove a restored 1990 Kenworth W900, Robert's gift, the same truck she'd fixed that first day. Painted on the driver's door in clean lettering, Farm Angel. She founded the Farmer's Shield program, offering free equipment safety inspections to small operations, taught equipment maintenance workshops at the community college, became agricultural advocacy coordinator, helping farmers navigate predatory lending and suspicious contracts. 11 farms saved from questionable lenders in the past 6 months. The Agricultural Protection Coalition featured her in their newsletter. Carlos called her boss now with genuine respect. Maria considered her family. Tia Helen. Helen sponsored a scholarship at Kansas State, the Thomas Louise Memorial Fund for Agricultural Engineering. She visited her father's grave regularly, kneeling beside the headstone. "I came home, Dad. I'm fighting for what you believed in." Sunday morning at the farmer's market, Helen sat at her booth. Free equipment safety checks. A line of farmers stretched back. Tractors, trucks, combines. She crawled under a 1987 International Harvester, emerged covered in dirt and grease. "Your fuel pump's failing. I can fix it Tuesday. No charge for parts or labor." The farmer looked confused. "Why no charge?" Helen wiped grease from her hands, smiled. "Because that's what community means. We take care of each other." She glanced at the camera, her father's watch visible on her wrist, found in his belongings, worn every day since. The voiceover came soft but certain. "They said she was just a waitress, just a dropout, just a girl who didn't belong." But Helen Louise proved that redemption isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up and fighting for what matters. She didn't just fix an engine, she fixed a broken system. And she finally came home. Dale Hutchins was sentenced to 28 years in federal prison. Barry Kowalski received 8 years, cooperated fully with prosecution. 14 farms were returned to their families, legal fees covered by Hutchins' asset forfeiture. Martinez Equipment Repair now employs 12 mechanics, including 3 women. Helen Louise graduated summa cum laude with her agricultural engineering degree in 2024. The Farmer's Shield program has inspected over 800 pieces of equipment and identified 47 cases of potential sabotage or predatory maintenance practices. She still drives the 1990 Kenworth W900. It now has 847,000 miles. If Helen's story inspired you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss stories of courage, redemption, and people who refuse to give up. Drop a like if you believe that one person can make a difference, and share this with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to come home. Tell us in the comments, what's the one thing you're going to fix in your own life? Because just like Helen proved, the impossible is only impossible until someone brave enough decides to try. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.